Hey, I'm Jonathan Green. I run a team called Streamline Properties. We're brokered by Real. I bet you clicked on this video because you want to know what in the world is going on with all of these buyer commission settlement uh, posts, news articles, all of the craziness, and how it might affect you if you're a home buyer or a home seller. The truth is, right now, it shouldn't really affect you at all because it's a non-binding, non-final settlement proposal. Just for background, I am an attorney. This is not legal advice, but I was a practicing attorney for more than 10 years. So I know a little bit about the legal process and what's going on. This doesn't mean you can take everything I say to the bank, but this is not binding right now. And it wasn't binding before when the lawsuit came out. Are there possibilities that there might be adjustments in the way that compensation is distributed? Sure, sure. And the way that the proposed settlement reads, it makes it seem like a lot's going to happen. But I actually don't think that much is going to change. And even if it does, personally, we've had a plan in place for this for a long time. But let's just go over a couple of things that I don't think the regular national news are really talking about because it really wouldn't be so hyperbolic to be able to put these things out there that would make sense. I want to start with something pretty basic. So let's just assume that everything were to go through as they said, and that buyer's compensation for buyer's agents was just going to be removed from the MLS. P.S. The settlement proposal still says that you can compensate the buyer. It just can't be listed on the MLS, and you could do it through a number of different ways. So in reality, buyer's comp isn't going to change much. It's just that the story sounds better when they make it sound like no one's going to use buyer's agents. Let's boil it down to this first point because this is the one that I think most people will get. If you're a home buyer and you want to buy a home and you find out that you don't have to pay a buyer's agent, does that mean that it's a good idea not to have a buyer's agent on your side? Because a PS, an attorney is not going to go with you to look at the house. An attorney is not going to show up for inspection. That's not going to happen. And if you don't have a buyer's agent, attorneys are going to cost a lot more. But let's just go over just the mechanics of a transaction. If you're a buyer, how are you going to do the contract? Are you going to download one from Office Depot and basically rescind half of your rights that are in each state's standard contract? I know you're thinking, no, I would never do that. I'll just have the listing agent write the contract. Well, the listing agent's probably going to want to get compensated for that. And that will be dual agency. And if the listing agent wants to get compensated for that, why wouldn't you just hire your own buyer's agent who only represents you? Maybe it's because you think you're going to get a better deal. But let me just remind you, and this is present in several other videos that I've done, when you're thinking about getting a deal on the biggest investment that you've ever made in your life in some of the hottest, steaming hot markets for sellers, in favor of sellers across the country, getting a deal is not going to help you. Discounts mean discount services, and that's often what can happen. Not to say that there aren't good discount agents on all sides of a transaction, but what you're asking for is something that's not going to happen. What you really want if you're a savvy buyer is the best person by your side through a transaction, regardless of the compensation. It can be whatever percentage, and commissions have always been negotiable and will remain negotiable. But that doesn't mean that each real estate agent wants to go down to the bottom of the barrel to do the same job that they've been doing for years. So if you just boil it down to this first point, how would a home buyer without a real estate agent transact on a real estate transaction? Who's going to write the contract? Who's going to open the lockbox? Are you only going to go to open houses? Because that's the only way you're going to be able to see the property. And then if you go to the open houses, then the listing agent or whoever's sitting the open house for them will have procuring cause for you as a buyer's agent. Are you following me here? This is not a great idea for you. So anybody who thinks they can use this to get leverage right now is just looking for discount agents who are going to whittle at the idea that something may change. Right now, nothing has changed. There's barely any in my market low comps on there because everybody's doing business the way that we always have, which again is always negotiable on the commission end. Buyers agents look up, they can see what the comp is. We're always going to show the property. If something were an extremely low comp, like 0 or 1 or less, it's something that we would probably address with our buyer and say, hey, look, the compensation is very low on this side. We'd like you to comp us up to this percentage. There's this weird rhetoric out there that people don't need buyer's agents, but that's because they look at real estate agents as all the same, which is ridiculous. And I will grant you that there's a fair amount of real estate agents who are just terrible or completely checked out or really don't know what they're doing because it's a very low bar to entry in real estate. But the most polished real estate agents on the listing side, on the buyer side, on the investor side are always worth their commission, no matter what it is, because they are your guides and your stewards to get through the process. I know from my experience that before I was a licensed realtor, I was an investor. And I used to see properties with a lot of different agents. I didn't feel like they knew a lot about investing, but I always wanted to work with someone who could help me with the things that I didn't want to do. And if you think that you're a home buyer who can fly solo, who's going to handle inspections? How are you even going to know who the best inspectors on the area? You're going to look it up on Yelp and think that's great. That's not where people go to review home inspectors. How are you going to know what attorney to choose? How are you going to know what title company is the best in the area? What if you need to do repairs afterwards? Real estate agents are not just rotating bobbleheads, they come with a whole source of resources, the best ones, to help you get through the transaction. So if we just boil it down to the contract phase, I don't see how that's even going to happen. Who's going to write the contract? You're going to pay a real estate attorney to write the standard contract and fill it out. That's going to cost you more. So everything that you think is going to happen or that the national news is proposing that happen is actually pretty ridiculous if you look at it. Buyer's agents aren't going to get pushed out of the business at all because the best don't need to do that. They're still going to be able to get comped for what they deserve. And even in the worst case scenario that the settlement goes through with some modified agreement where it can't be on the MLS, and then a lot of us have to adjust to doing buyer agency agreements that lay out the comp, that's fine. We're ready for that. But that doesn't mean everyone's going to go to be a discount buyer's agent either. I would actually tell you that most of us who are really, really good on the buyer side, you may see higher comps on the buyer side. And all that's going to do is bring down the price. Remember, this suit originally was brought by sellers. So what's going to happen if now buyers have to pay the compensation for their agent and it's not baked into the deal like it has been, what's going to happen to prices? It's very likely that they're going to go down because now that comp can't be financed. Because remember, the comp is financed right now. So let's just say, for example, it's a 5% total commission and it's 2.5% out to each side. That's part of the sale price. So the sale price is actually financed in there. Once you pull that out and the side's only on the side of the listing side, that can't be compensated as part of the mortgage. So say the buyer side comp was $15,000, you can't roll that into a mortgage. So that means you need $15,000 more dollars as a buyer to go with your full down payment and your inspection and your closing costs. And that's not going to be something that buyers are going to look forward to. So who are they going to look to take the money out of? The sellers. So in the end, the sale prices are likely to come down in this, and it's not going to be a ravaging of buyers agents. So these are just a couple thoughts to give you maybe a little bit more mindful perspective of what's really going on. I've listened to, I don't know, way too many misinformed news reports and Instagram reels. Nobody really knows what they're talking about. The people who know what they're talking about aren't quaking in their boots right now because this is non-final. They're just planning. We all have contingency plans in place in case we need to adjust. And if we need to adjust, those of us who have built value as real estate teams and real estate agents across the country are not really worried about this because we're trying to operate always at the top of our game and we can be selective about our clientele. So that's just the way that I look at it. You can take it with a grain of salt. Commissions, again, they've always been negotiable. They'll continue to be negotiable. But if you're a home buyer or a home seller or an investor, I would say that you need to look at it very hard. And the more that you try to get the comp lower, the more likely you're going to get an agent who's going to give you lower service because that's just how it is. That's just part of every single business. You don't go into a doctor's office and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a heart surgery. Who can do it for the least?" So why would you take this investment, which, listen, most of the time, your first home or your home is the biggest investment that you've ever made. So why is everybody so interested in discounting that service and making it like we don't do anything as realtors when we're out there sometimes with buyers hustling 30, 40, 50 showings, plus writing 10 offers, all the drive time. When you boil it down to the hourly comp, none of us make as much as you think. It's always split with the brokerage. It's often split with the team. So these are just some things to have you at least get a little bit better information about what's going on. I hope this has been helpful. If you want to work with our team, you can find information for that at streamlined.properties. We currently operate in New Jersey, New York, a small part of Nevada, and we just opened in Florida. So if you do have questions, though, I actually would encourage you to put them in the comments. I always respond. Hope this has been helpful. Have a great day.